All original members have just been appointed a new member. And Chuck Sheehan and Ryan PZC are our new alternates. Welcome. First thing on the agenda is that time of year for election of officers. Do I hear any motion?
All right. Motion to appoint David Rathburn as chairman for the next, what is it, 2 years, a year, whatever.
1 year.
Next year as chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Do I hear a second? Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice President, Vice Chairman. Do I hear any nominations?
Did you nominate me?
I would nominate Ben.
Well, Gardner.
Oh, he's up.
You want it?
He's up. Gardner. I'll nominate Gardner.
Do I hear a second?
Second motion.
Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it. Secretary. Do I have a nomination for secretary?
I nominate Ben.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any other nomination? All those in favor of Ben?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, welcome, Ben, yeah.
All
All
right.
right. Minutes of the last meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
Do I hear a second? Lynn, you're the only one that can second it.
I wasn't here.
I second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain. I'll abstain as well.
POCD, Keith?
Sure. I have this email from Curtis Lynch from the Plan of Conservation and Development Implementation Committee that I will send around here. Now, the POCD Implementation Committee, they're a group who, they don't actually literally implement the POCD, but they keep track of the implementation of the plan, and they sort of work with the groups who are the responsible parties for implementing the tasks and policies there. And the board is largely made up of members of different groups, and Mr. Philbrick is the representative of the Planning and Zoning Commission on that board. The group has some members who are liaisons to different groups, who go to different group meetings and sort of keep abreast of what they're doing. And Curtis is the liaison for this commission, Planning and Zoning. Even though he's not on Planning and Zoning anymore, he's sort of taken on the role of keeping abreast of the planning functions of this board. So it's not a necessary thing, and other boards don't do it, but he suggested just having this motion here to continue the status of Curtis Lynch as the point of contact within the Plan of Conservation and Development Implementation Committee, serving as liaison for the planning function of the PZC. Now, underneath he has this discussion. There's a lot in there that really we can't get into tonight, so I'd recommend if the commission approves this motion that they make a point of just literally approving that motion and continuing that discussion to another night.
Do I have any feelings on this Curtis's letter? He's been very active for us on it.
He's good at it, and I sure as hell don't want to do it.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Makes Curtis happy.
Item 5D are the administrative review items. 5D1 is PZ 1720 SPA and CAM, Greylock Property Group, Edgewood Mac LLC. A request for modifications to site plan approval and coastal area management review applications for the approved development of 42 residential townhouse units in 7 individual structures, property located at 16 Harry Austin Drive, Mystic Assessors Map 160, Block 4, Lot 8, Zone IHRD 2. Now, the current rendition of this approval was approved by the commission in 2017. It was originally approved back in 2004 under different plans. Construction's yet to begin there. This is the site of the former Mystic Color Lab, which was demolished years ago and was approved as 42 residential units. The current request is just to increase the length of each of the 7 residential buildings by just 2 feet. And this can accommodate optional elevators within the unit. There's no additional units proposed, no other changes to the site. And Mr. Fettis is here to represent that and has plans for you.
Good evening. My name's Greg Fettis with Fettis Engineering, representing Greylock Properties regarding this administrative site plan approval. As Keith stated, the plan, basically as you see it, that was the plan that was actually approved back in 2017. If I put the one that we presented to you tonight up, you really can't tell the difference, but we basically added 2 feet to the units, so to the majority of the units, so they went from 48 feet to 50 feet. They're still 20 feet wide. So Keith's numbers that are in the staff review of about 2,000 square foot additional footprint out of 120,000, or actually a third of that, so it's about 40,000. So it's about a 5% increase in building footprint, about a 5% increase in gross floor area. Again, if you look at the 2 site plans, you really can't tell. It's imperceptive. And I have also here an owner, the owner rep from Greylock is here. If there's any questions regarding why they're going ahead and adding the 2 feet. But the biggest reason is the ability to put an elevator in, so appeal to a wider market of clientele. They are 3-story units, so I think the elevators are important, or an option of an elevator is very important. Also, the architects here, but again, the elevations and floor plans really didn't change that much. Again, it's 2 feet, it's imperceptible. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Just so I understand, each one of those units is now going to be 2 feet wider in total, or?
2 feet longer, so
Okay,
it's 48 feet, and now it's 50.
Okay, so that's it. I mean,
That's all, yeah.
it's not, each building is going to be 2 feet wider than originally approved.
Right, 2 feet longer.
Well, yeah, well, I said,
Front to back.
okay.
So if you look at, these are the 2, that's the originally approved plan. This is the one we're presenting tonight.
Yeah, you can't tell the difference.
Can't tell the difference.
Naked eye, you can't really tell.
Okay, I just, I like to make sure, I like to know what I'm voting on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any setback issues with the addition of the 2 feet on any of the buildings?
No, we held all the setback requirements. If we needed to, we kind of came into the site. Where we could, we bumped a little bit back, but no setback issues were created.
Okay, thank you.
So we just have the recommended stipulation that the plans be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer, just so we can go over any drainage issues.
I have one last question. Is the height changed? Nothing goes above the 3rd floor?
It did change slightly, but it's still within the
But no
parameter.
shafting or,
Right.
yeah.
Since they're 2 feet longer, the gable's just got a whisker higher.
How much?
We didn't? The architect just told me that the height didn't change, so it was a shallower pitch, so that was my mistake. The lot coverage got slightly slightly larger. I can give you the exact in the table here.
It is, I see it in the table, but I don't see the required, I see the proposed, not the required.
Yeah, I think in this zone that there are not specific requirements for it. But it was about a 5% increase in, I wouldn't say lot coverage, I would say building coverage. Yeah.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion on this application? Do I hear a second?
Second?
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
So with the town engineer stipulation,
Oh, sorry. The town engineer, approve with the town engineer system.
yeah,
So the motion is to approve with stipulation as,
Yeah,
recommended by staff.
yeah.
Okay. Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item 5D2, PZ 1408, SUP Spruce Meadows LLC, request for modification of emergency access material for special use permit application for construction of 2 multi-unit residential structures, a community building with caretaker unit, and associated improvements. Total number of dwelling units proposed is 43. Property located at 86 and 88 South Broad Street, Pawcatuck. Assessors map 25, block 1, lots 3 and 4, zone LS5. This change is for the Spruce Ridge development, which is currently under construction on Route 1 in Pawcatuck. It's approved back in 2014 by this commission. This is a change that was requested by the Pawcatuck Fire Marshal. It's a change for the material of the emergency access driveway that is being constructed between the 2 sites, between Spruce Ridge, under construction now, and Spruce Meadows, which has already been constructed and occupied. The fire marshal strongly urges acceptance here in his email today. The reason is because the grass pavers that were approved, the fire district has found they don't really support the weight of the emergency vehicles enough. So the recommended change is to just bituminous, like a typical driveway. To prevent runoff from going into the street, a catch basin is going to be added in the area of Route 1. That'll be piped back into the site, a temporary catch basin that was for a temporary sedimentation area is going to be left there and become permanent. The project engineers here, if there's any questions for the commission, and as in the last one, we have the recommended stipulation that the plans be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer and Pawcatuck Fire Marshal.
Any questions on this?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. Thank you. Sorry about that. So, could you describe the visual difference between grass pavers and the now recommended pavers?
Oh, the visual difference is pretty clear. The grass pavers that was originally approved by this commission were not really actually paver blocks. They were a reinforced turf grid. It's a high-density polyethylene grid that's expanded out, put on a supposedly prepared subbase filled with stone. So you'd be basically looking almost like at a stone driveway
Okay.
in this particular area. The fire marshal had some heartburn with that because that was the same product that was used on Spruce Meadows, which is phase 1. The product by the manufacturer, according to the manufacturer, oh yeah, it's going to work all day long as far as fire trucks are concerned. That may be true if they're installed properly and the subgrade's proper. They had a lot of issues with that on Spruce Meadows. He didn't want to have to deal with that on this. He had approved this originally when we went through the approvals, but now this is all coming to light because there are other developments in town that also use not necessarily those, the the plastic grid, if you will, but also concrete pavers, which look like waffle blocks. So they basically are, they're concrete, they interlock, you lay them down, and you can plant grass in the holes or you can fill it up with stone. Excuse me, we offered that as an alternative here. And I, also offered that we would, make sure that the subgrade was proper and everything was properly installed and tested and certified, et cetera. He still didn't feel comfortable with it because he said in his experience with the other concrete grass pavers in town, even though if they're installed properly during the snow plowing, they get dislodged and it makes a mess. So he really didn't feel comfortable with that either. He's asked for a bituminous pavement, so it's going to look like a driveway. It's the measurements of it are 20 foot wide by 100 foot long. Comes off a paved apron already that we're going to be putting in off of Route 1. Excuse me, and extends back towards the back of the property. And there'll be a small turnoff off of that crushed stone driveway for utility vehicles to access a Eversource transformer that's on the Meadows property. That's minor. Drainage was an issue with this because the minute he said he wanted to go with pavement, I'm like, I don't want to bring that water back out to the gutter on Route 1. If you're familiar with that site in that area of Route 1, she comes down a pretty good slope and then it levels out and it's almost dead flat running through that gutter. So if I add any more water to that, that's just going to pose a problem later on. So I said, okay, we got to put in a catch basin before that water hits the gutter, intercept it, run it back into the site. We just so happen to have, as Keith said, an extra catch basin sitting out there that we had installed for our sediment basin during construction. That was going to be taken out, but that's the closest point of connection to our system. So that's going to stay in, and we're just going to pipe back to there. On a side note, I did talk to Scott DeLetta at length this week. He had called me after he had looked at this, and he said he had no issues with this at all. He thought it was a pretty common sense approach to the whole thing, and he's got no changes or suggestions for anything different on that.
So the catch basin is it's buried, right? You're not going to see it. It's not as if it's a basin, like
The
a
catch basin
yeah.
is what you see in the gutters of the streets. It's a storm drain inlet. It's flush to the ground and it's got steel grate on it. So no, you don't see it sticking up, but it's flush to the ground.
And how wide is it going to be?
It's a standard catch basin. It's generally about 2.5 feet by 3.5 feet, 4 feet. That's the sump.
So there's very little grass, there's very little green in these two developments. Is there, and so now we're going from crushed stone to more of a driveway look with this proposal. Is there something that can be done to kind of soften and add some green here?
Well, it's
as
gonna
a alternative, now that, if we grant this change, you've now got a hard, packed driveway going all the way the length of a property on, again, a development that has minimal green. I mean, it's not green at all. And so what I'm asking is, what can you do? If this is changed, what modification, you're asking for a site modification, what modification can you make to make it a little bit more green?
Well, first
Now
of
that
all,
we've seen it built.
First of all, it's not completed yet, so they haven't even started to put the green in.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the slopes you're seeing along the back and along the side running up the road, that's all going to be grass. There's going to be plenty green along that slope. They're doing all the bush plantings and tree plantings right now as we speak. To add any additional grass out there, we really don't have any additional real estate to do that with.
Yeah, it's pretty built
Everything
up.
down at the bottom of that slope is going to be grass except for this driveway. And it doesn't run the full depth of the lot. It only comes in 100 feet. We gauged that and measured that, and the fire marshal approved it. It's all he needed to get in for his hook and ladder to access that tall building, which is Building A, the one that sticks way up out of the ground. So it only goes in, I'm going to say, about 50-60% of the depth of the site, if that. And then the rest of it's going to be all grass in that area. And all those slopes, those terrace slopes going up, that's all going to be green. So you just haven't seen it yet because it's not finished yet, and we can't wait for it to be finished.
I bet. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add Pawcatuck Fire Marshal in there also.
Do I hear a motion on that, please?
Make a motion to approve with being reviewed by the town engineer and the Pawcatuck Fire Chief.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you for your time.
you.
Appreciate it.
You had public hearing now, right?
Yeah.
We have to read that?
Oh, wait a minute.
It's a continuation.
I think we
have to read
usually
it for
do.
the next one.
Continuation.
At this time, we will continue the public hearing, postponed from October, on PZ 1923ZC 1189 Pequot Trail LLC. Seated tonight will be Ben Philbrook, myself, David Rathman, Gardner Young, Lynn Conway, and I understand, Fred, that you have reviewed everything, is that correct?
I have, yes.
So Fred has reviewed all the minutes and the recordings of the last one, so he'll be able to sit in lieu of Peter, who couldn't be here tonight. Where are we at? We're at the rebuttal from the applicant? I think that's where we're at. Is that,
That's right.
yeah.
And I should add too that about 10 years ago on another issue, we got a town attorney opinion that for when you have a continued hearing, if there are alternates who weren't part of the commission during the first part, then the alternates shouldn't participate in the discussion. So.
Even if they've listened to the tape?
No, Fred's a regular member. He has
Right.
listened to it.
Right,
But
right.
if the
They weren't
others,
part- No, they weren't.
Yeah, even if they listen to the recording.
You weren't sworn in,
Oh,
and I think you don't have any standing.
Right, right.
Yeah.
okay.
No,
No,
it's
it's
continued. So we're waiting for the applicant on his rebuttal.
Good evening, Commissioner, and fellow commissioners.
I can't hear it.
R.Valenti. I'm here this evening because of the continuation of the public hearing from last month, and I believe we're in the rebuttal stage. One of the reasons I believe for the continuation was we hadn't heard from the police commission because they met the following night after our first meeting, public hearing. So we did hear from the commission. I did have comments, and I believe they've unanimously approved what I proposed, and I believe the comments have been shared with the town and with you all as well. So that has been taken up. And I guess I don't know if there's any other comments. Like, this is Rich Cody, my attorney.
Yep. Good evening. There were a couple of points that were raised during the comments of the opposition, a lot of which were answered on the direct submittals by Mr. Valenti. There was the question of farming, and I think you've probably had a chance to review the assessor's records to show it's been the PA 490 for a substantial period of time. And I went through the regulations. Farming, agriculture includes the harvesting of timber. Also, I can point out that the Connecticut General Statute specifically defines the terms farming and agriculture as including timbering. We do have one person who is here today who lived in the house at around the time it was harvested, may have had something to do with that. Is that Bill? Yep. Okay. Just bring him up to explain what had happened.
I had lived in the house,
Name, please.
oh, sorry, Bill Middleton, 1034 Pequot Trail. I had lived in the house in the late 90s into the early 2000s. And after I had moved out, I stayed in contact with the owners and had set them up with Chris Cassidy, who lives here in town, to forest the property. And my recollection is that it's probably around 2008 or so. So it has been actively forested over the years. And that was also not the first time it had been forested. I remember the Calvies, the prior owners, making reference to it having been harvested, I believe, in the late 80s as well.
Thank you.
It's easy to point out that when you're harvesting timber, you don't do it every year. We were waiting for the comments from the police commission, and they're in the record, I think. And the specific finding was there's no adverse impact on traffic parking. So I believe that answers those issues. In terms of summary, this floating zone was adopted by the commission for purposes of facilitating farms and assisting them in being able to be productive and to remain viable. As you know, farming just isn't viable by itself that much anymore, and particularly with horse farms that Mr. Valenti is trying to establish and has established. And this particular zone is designed to allow certain kinds of uses to augment, not to replace, but augment that use. And that's what Mr. Valenti is proposing. And your regulations, for example, say that this particular zone can only land in a residential district. That's exactly what we're talking about. So this zone anticipates that it would be within the proximity of residences, and that the uses allowed are compatible where they're properly regulated by your site plan. And again, we're not here for the site plan, we're here for the zone change. Your regs require a minimum of 35 acres. Mr. Valenti's got about 70, 80?
78. Yeah.
78. The nearest house from the center of the activity is about 1,200 feet away from where the activities will occur. And some of the uses that are specifically allowed in this zone that you've already determined to be compatible with a residential district, so long as it's on a farm, are wineries, microbrews, events like weddings, subject to a management plan, which Mr. Valenti's proposed, restaurants, and retail sales. So Ms. Valenti's proposal is actually less intense than what your regulations allow. So we think it's going to be an asset to the community. We think it's an asset to the area. We believe the impacts can be properly regulated by the site plan, and we'd ask you to approve it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Not having been through the meeting, but listened to the tape of the meeting, I got the impression that a lot of the concerns that were raised about this operation was, the usual thing, traffic noise, whatever. What I think we're trying to get at here with this agricultural heritage zone is we want a farm that's supported by, or as you said, augmented by other activities rather than a wedding venue that happens to be a farm, if you know what I mean. So my question is there some reasonable limit that we can put on these activities in terms of the number of functions and the size of the functions that will allow the farm to operate and to sustain itself without sort of tipping the balance toward a venue? And if you've run the numbers, you must have some sense of what it would take to do that.
Well, again, we built this as a horse farm. My wife has been fond of horses and done a lot of studying and research, and we sought out the property because it fits that. And first and foremost, it's a horse farm, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to raise horses. We're growing hay. We're doing all that, and have other plans for the farm. But this appealed to me as when I looked at the regulations that I know everybody told me, you're crazy to start a horse farm. It costs a lot of money. It can't sustain itself, and you need other things to help sustain that. So that's why this zone was established, and that's why I looked, or we looked to do that. And I looked at Stone Acres' application, who's the second or the first one in town with this was approved, and they really didn't set a limit on the amount of venues. It's hard for me to do that because I don't know how the popularity is going to be, but at the same token, I'm going into it as a horse farm. That's what we want to do. So I can't have horse boarders there that want to use the arena, and well, you can't. You paid me to board your horse there, and now you can't use the arena because we're going to have an event so many nights that it doesn't become fruitful to have it as a horse farm. So we would like to continue. The main purpose is the horse farm, but this is to help out, I guess. I don't know how I say it.
So would say a dozen weddings a year be enough to sustain the horse farm? Is there any way to judge how much is enough to
Right.
sustain the operation without becoming a burden on the neighbors?
Okay. I don't, honestly, I don't know exactly the numbers of this, to be honest with you, because I haven't done a horse farm before or done that, so I don't have the exact numbers of how many it would take. I don't really have the complete numbers of as how much income it's going to produce and how much the expenses are going to be, because we're going to with a fresh, brand new business. So there's a little ambiguity and vagueness to it in that portion.
So I'm going to continue along the same line. And you did mention Stone Acres.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is a stipulation in Stone Acres as to how many outdoor events they can have per season or per year. So I just want to let you know, I do think that we had put something in that approval.
I checked this today, that we only limited the number of participants, I think, Keith, do you have that down?
Is the maximum number of guests is 250, but we didn't have an actual ceiling on the number of events they could have. And all outdoor events had to end by 10 p.m. with Stone Acres.
We did put a limitation on Coogan Farm, on the number
That's right.
of events they
Yeah,
could have.
and I don't have that info, but that is something where we said, they can only have a certain amount of events over a certain size per year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did. And it was because of traffic, it was because, there were a lot of reasons for that. And again, as Fred has pointed out, it's augmenting. And I know you have good intentions and
Right.
that you're gonna carry through, but this would go with the property, if it was to change hands, if somebody else came in with a different management style, maybe a different goal. So you haven't given any thought on throwing out a number of events that you would have.
I could do that, yes. I mean, is it with something similar to what Stone Acres, the other thing, what they did, what they limited their number of events to be sufficient to carry out what's already been established?
May I interrupt?
Yeah.
Now, we're talking about large events, you can have an event with 50 people with no problem. But we're talking about if you have over 100 or over 200 people, I think there should be a limitation on that. I think the small events would be no problem.
Mhm.
I think that we should limit it for the large events. And 'cause you can have reception people, business meeting up there, 50 people or 20 people. and we can't, that's an event. So I think this is the large events with music.
Let me qualify large events with music at
Okay.
night, you know, I
Yeah.
just think, you know, when we had the discussion last meeting, there was some concern, and I know that the committee, you know, the commission, you know, tried to say, so how many?
Okay.
I s-
Okay. I did submit, you know, kind of an idea of some plan of number of maximum of guests and all that, so I did submit that based on the recommendations, and I did take the music to a lower, lesser time during the week, Sunday through Thursday, based on some recommendations that you had put forward. And I guess, I don't know, I didn't see what the Stone Acres proposal had as far as the limitation on the number of larger events. But I'm sure if it worked for them, I'd be willing to accept that.
Just so you know, I misspoke, it wasn't Stone Acres, it was Coogan.
Oh,
Coogan
okay.
Farm, sorry,
Okay.
I misspoke.
Okay.
Flip it around.
Yep.
How many times do you want your barn interrupted with a weekend event?
Right. Right.
Because when you plan a wedding,
Yeah.
you need a day to set up, a day to break down.
Correct.
If you know, a lot of people who like to ride on a weekend,
Right.
they're out of luck. So I think it's on you
Okay.
to think of it to your other customers, how often do they want to get interrupted?
Okay.
And you.
Yeah.
I would propose perhaps a dozen events, large events, and large meaning over 100, is just to kick around. And then my other concern is outdoor music. Is there going to be any music in the tent outside?
I was proposing something for if we have weddings or something like that. Yeah, you would have something in the tents. There's a nice courtyard actually behind the house, way behind the house, which is closer to the 95 section and closer to the reservoir section. It's further away from the residential area, is what I was proposing. And there's actually the house and the barn in between that as well, so it would act even more as a buffer. So that's kind of where probably the tents would go. And the indoor arena is 100 by 200, so it's very large, and it's got, you know, fire safety
Right.
features, and with the fire department approved it and all. So any of the larger events, I don't want to, you know, pay for a tent if I've got a one that I built already. So I could have those events inside as well, absolutely.
That's what I'm
And that would
suggesting
buffer
is
some of the
keep-
sound as well.
I'm suggesting keeping the music
Yeah.
in the barn only, and not having any music allowed outside.
I would like to have some outside, because there's a lot of times you'll have, like, I've been to like craft shows and craft festivals, and they'll have like acoustic music, or they'll have something outside playing while people are around or outside. Or I was just at a wedding at a farm up in Lisbon, and they had music in it, and I don't
We
think it
could
was
say
disturbing.
non-amplified music. Non-amplified music, only outside.
You know,
Thank you.
we might want to hold off and, you know, during discussion have that, but you know, kind of the definition of amplified and non.
We can do this during the deliberation.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I-
then the only other question, I'm
Yes.
sorry,
Yes.
Rob, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
The microbreweries, right? So that's part of this, and again, there was some comments from the neighbors about that. Could you just elaborate what you would be thinking there, or would it be acceptable to just say, well, we're not gonna, you know, we'll not have that as part of the.
My vision for that, or our vision for that, was just in some of the smaller outbuildings I have there, is you'll have people that come up, and actually a lot of the equestrians are women and children and that, and a lot of times the husband will come up to watch her like that, but I thought maybe afterwards they might want to sit down and have a beer or that, and same thing, a couple of the women said, oh, are you gonna you're gonna have wine here? You know, we go sit back and have a wine after we relax or ride, or we can have our girlfriends come up and then do that. So it was very, very small. I'm not planning on making a Gray Sales brewery or a Cottrell brewery or anything like that. It's just a small little venue in one of the outbuildings is what my takers on that. There's an old barn foundation there that could be used for like a patio, so you'd have that and view of the horses and all.
Thank you.
Any other questions this time? Do I hear a thank you.
All right.
Do I hear motion to close the public hearing.
So, well,
gotta
before
wait
that,
for
I just
Keith.
wanted to add a couple things. One is that the protest petition that was submitted at the last meeting did end up being successful in forcing a supermajority vote by the commission. In the staff report, I sent out a memo that said it did not. Since then, they have increased the number of signatures that we got today, so you need 20% of the acreage within 500 feet to basically protest the zone change. With the signatures we received today, they got to 22%. So what that means is 4 out of 5 commission members would have to vote to approve this.
Any other thing from Keith?
Well, just a general overview, especially if people weren't here at the last meeting, that this is a change to the agricultural heritage district. So it's a master plan zone. Unlike other zone changes, you can only do what's on the master plan. So although the regulations say you can do a number of things, let's say he wanted to do a restaurant here in the future, he'd have to come back and go through the same process to do something different like that. So, you know, the uses are sort of baked into the master plan. In this zone, it comes in a 2-step process usually. There's the master plan, and then there's the more detailed site plan. And usually, when we're talking about things like this, we're talking about developing and building something. So, Mr. Valenti, if this is approved, would have to come back for a site plan before this commission with another public hearing. That site plan will be largely redundant because there's nothing much else to review. We're not talking about plans to develop the site with drainage plans, and those are the things that are usually reviewed at that point. So just to let you know, there would be this largely redundant site plan process. As far as what can be done if the zone is left as GBR 130, many of the things that are proposed, such as the horse barn and the agricultural uses, could be done in that zone. It's mainly the events that are the thing that the zone change is needed for. And microbrewery, too.
Keith, a question. So is what you're saying is that we have to essentially decide now what can be done on the site, because the site plan itself will not be a big deal, and there won't be much opportunity to change.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the main
Okay.
takeaways here, is that to essentially get what you want now in the master plan stage. And, that's been our advice for other master plan proposals too. So if there are the things that you've been starting to talk about, like hours of operation, number of events, to stipulate those if you're going to approve this now, rather than punting it to the site plan stage. Because that's more about just if there are any details that haven't been answered yet.
Do I hear a motion to close this public hearing? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is now closed. I'd like to entertain a motion on this application.
I would make a motion to approve the application make a motion to approve the application with stipulations as to the number of events and the size of events. And I'll throw out a starting point and say 4 events that are outdoors, in excess of 100 people, no more than 24 in a year.
What was that?
24 in a year.
What did you say, what was the first thing? Outdoors?
Outdoor events for more than 100 people, no more than 24 in a calendar year.
Do I hear a second on this application?
Feel free to
So-
amend it.
We will.
I'd like to amend it.
But do we have a second, then we can, do we have a second?
Second.
No, we haven't, any discussion and amendments?
Yeah, so, 24, and again, I think that from what I heard from the neighbors, I think 24 events, which is 2 a month, right? If you divide it equally, right? But we're looking at weddings, outdoor weddings, that's all going, let's be real, this is all going to be happening in the nicer weather. And so that could be every weekend if we allow that as a maximum for outdoor events. For, if you think about July, August, September, and you do a Friday and Saturday, it's about 24. Do I think that it'll get there? No, I don't think that's the intention at all. But this is the opportunity for us to think about worst-case scenario, and if it never gets, if it's not going to happen, then there's nothing wrong with making that a little bit less. So I'd like to propose something to the event, or to, between, June and September, which I'm thinking is, daylight savings time, that kind of thing. If we say something like 8 events, 8 outdoor events, over 100 people, and during that time. And then we could say that's what I'm
But
thinking.
Ben has some thoughts on it.
Okay. And then for music, I really don't see how you have a wedding and you don't have like an amplifier or something if you were to have a band. So in the course of the discussion, I think we need to take that into consideration. I mean, if you're having, a outdoor wedding reception under a tent, I think you're most likely going to have the need for some kind of amplifier. And it sounds like where that will be is not going to be near neighbors. It's going to be, there's going to be a building buffer, et cetera. So I just want to think about, have a more thorough discussion about that.
Ben?
I think, as we all know, sound travels a lot. So I guess my amendment would be non-amplified music outdoors, period. They have a huge building that's better than any tent that I'm assuming most of the events will be held in. And there's plenty of music in there that they proposed a 10 o'clock shut off, which I think is good for music, and 11 o'clock close down the event.
How many events?
Well, we have 12, I was thinking 12. Fred's proposed 24, maybe we could strike a medium in there. You wanted 8?
Well, I think we
sounds
have to
more.
limit it within the again, that, if you think about it, that's when those events are going to be happening. And let's say you're a neighbor and you want to have a family party or something like that, and every weekend it's a big event.
But he was
So
also
I'm just
talking
trying
about
to,
having fundraisers during the year indoors.
Yeah.
And if it has 100 people, that qualifies as an event as we're describing it.
but I'm saying within this period of time, no more than 8 outdoor
In-
events.
Outdoors.
So
The
maybe-
indoor- You don't care about the indoors.
I'm thinking no, because I don't think that has as much effect on the neighbors. It's contained, it's, there's plenty of area for parking, et cetera. So
It's the outdoor.
it's the outdoor events
Outdoor,
that I just don't want the neighbors to have the entire summer with the possibility of every weekend, there's a 200-person event on the property. And I don't think that's the intent either. But again, it's just, let's put some limitation on there to protect the neighbors,
Gardner?
Well, I like the idea of, limiting the events in the summer. But also, as far as the noise goes, if you're going to have horses there, having some experience with horses in my life, they don't like loud noises either. They get a little antsy and jumpy if there's a lot of noise there. So, I mean, I think it's sort of a built-in regulator there. I mean, you can't have a screaming rock band if you have a lot of high-strung horses, unless they're out in the field or something like that, because they'll jump and bolt and kick down stalls and that kind of stuff. So I think the primary use is a horse farm, and I think that'll be a limiter on what you can do as far as events go. And I sort of agree with Lynn that we should put a limit on outdoor events in the summer and sort of let the indoor events happen because they're indoors and they aren't going to be, they aren't going to be, the noise isn't going to travel that far. And if they have horses there, we can limit how much noise they can do because the horses won't be happy. And if you have a boarder there that has a $50,000 show horse, you can't upset that horse, man. I mean, no, that doesn't work. So I think the fact that they have horses on property will work as a limiter on the noise in the event. But again, that's sort of my experience with horses.
And from a noise perspective, we already have an ordinance on noise, right?
Yeah.
So it would have to
It's enforced
be
by the
in
police department.
compliance
Yeah.
with that as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
So, it's not as if, as your point, it's not as if
So-
it's a rock concert, it's, we've
Can
already
I
got a limitation there.
Have an amendment on your, Fred, on your motion to, Ben says 8, I'd say, Lynn says 8, Ben says 15, say 12.
Yeah. So you want to say 12
Outdoor
outdoor
events.
events between June and September?
Yeah.
A max-
Guys,
May.
A max-
count the weekends. I'm just saying, count the weekends. You got June, July, August, that's every single weekend.
And September.
That's
And
September.
September, and
So
May, and you have
I-
May's daylight savings too, so.
Well, I don't
I would
know.
say-
I think you're pushing it with 12 personally.
Well, do I,
I think 8, remember, they're not intending to do it. This
Well,
isn't part of their
we-
business plan.
let's go 10.
So,
Can we try it this way? Limit the number of events between, say, May 15 and October 15, okay? Because,
That's the wedding season.
we all know September and early October are the best times to be here, right? To a number, let's say 8 or 12. And with the idea that if it proves difficult for the operator or the neighbors, that we'll come back and reconsider it?
I agree.
Now, when you say
I-
events, are you saying outdoor
Outdoor
events?
events.
I would
Right.
say, I think you're giving them that period from May, what'd you say?
May 15th to
15th
October
15th. 12 events, but no more than 2 a month.
Okay. The math works?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, one other question I will raise, okay. You have a horse farm with, let's say, at the end of the day, one broken down horse that you don't care about, and an event space.
They can't hear you.
Well, how do you limit, in addition to the number of events, how do you limit the operation of the supplemental activities so that it remains primarily a horse farm? And is there another way to do that and say something like, in addition to the number of events, no more than, say, 20% of the revenues from the entire operation can be other
No.
than?
No, you can't do
We can't do that.
You can't do that.
It'll probably be too difficult to enforce.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
the thing I like the concept of is between May 15th and October
October
15th, no more than 12 outside
Okay,
events.
yeah.
And then the inside events, let them happen.
Anytime.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
cares? You aren't going to hear it, and they
Okay.
have, I mean, theoretically.
But no
the
more than
primar-
2 a month.
The primary purpose of this is a horse farm.
Right.
And as I said, if you have high-strung, high-bred horse, expensive horses there, you can't upset that apple cart, man.
But no more than 2 a month. That way, that way is not every Saturday night.
So we'll amend the motion,
Yeah,
12 events between the
12 outdoor events.
outdoor events, more than 100 people, between May 15th and October 15th, and no more than 2 in a month.
yeah.
Okay? Does that work?
Yep.
So just to clarify, they can have events after October 15th?
Yeah, this is, we're
So
just.
when you write it out, it
They
almost
can have
seems
as many as
like,
they want.
yeah, they're limited to only those months.
No,
Outdoor.
that is not, that's,
Oh, indoor they can have.
okay. So they can have, let's step it out, because that was good question, Keith. So indoor events, unlimited. Okay?
Yeah.
Outdoor events,
Fewer than 100 people
with,
is unlimited.
with fewer than 100,
Well, we,
right?
Yeah.
that's the way the motion reads. We
Yeah.
can change it.
With fewer than 100 unlimited, outdoor events between May 15th and October 15th, greater than
100.
100, no more than 2 a month,
Yep.
with a maximum of 12 during that period. And then we definitely
I would
should
say,
put some
I would
kind.
just say a maximum of 12 events a year. Rather than, because what's gonna happen if someone wants to have an event in January, 12 outdoor events a year. That way we don't care, but no more than 2 a month.
Oh, okay, no more than 12 outdoor events a year, but no more than 2 a month, period. So there's no May to October.
For groups of 100 or more.
100 or more, yep.
Okay.
All right.
Yours?
And a couple other things is the maximum of 250 guests, that's something that the applicant
Yes.
has stated.
Yep.
Over 250. Anything additional about music?
No.
You want to restrict the outdoor?
Well, we have the time, we have timing in the, because that's the original proposal
Right.
for music, timed,
Yeah, the 10 o'clock,
10 o'clock. Is that,
that's it. Everyone happy with that motion? Any more discussion on the motion? Are there any other motions we need on this,
Should we
Keith?
ask the secretary to read it back?
Yes, Keith. Keith,
Well-
yeah, take it from the top. Exactly what are we voting on?
What I have as indoor events are unlimited. Outdoor events of fewer than 100 are unlimited, fewer than 100 guests. Outdoor events of from 100 to 250 guests, were we just sticking with 12 per year or the whole?
12 per year.
but no more than 2 a month?
Okay. Maximum of 2 per month all year?
Mhm.
Okay.
And of course,
And,
we've said, we're following this information that is in the proposal. Keep
Right.
from time of music, time,
Yeah.
the close down of the events,
Yeah.
et cetera.
And also amplified music limited to 10 PM,
Yep.
no later than 10 PM?
And all events are over by 11, no matter what.
Okay.
Now, I did have a couple other ones in the staff report that were less difficult, I guess. Another one was the applicant shall work with the Office of State Archaeology to locate any historic cemeteries on the site. Any such cemeteries shall be depicted during the site plan application. And also, master plan shall be recorded in the town's land evidence records along with stipulations of approval.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Was there any, I just wanted to ask, were there any other communications from the public brought forward in between the last meeting and this meeting that we need to read or know about, Keith, before we vote?
Well, there was the protest petition that was mentioned. But yeah, in your folders are other comments here. Yeah. We have,
Anything that has to be read into the record? Anything?
they don't have to be read into the record here, but we have a letter of support from Shelley Mancini. Let's see, we have a letter against it with concerns from Robin and John Swennerton at Backacres Way. And a letter of support from Bill and Louise Phillips. Information about a possible cemetery on the site from Brian Bentz. And that was it as far as letters submitted.
We have a motion on the floor. All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion carried.
When did the public comments start?
They're over.
Oh, I wasn't given a chance to speak.
It was the last meeting.
Oh.
But at the end of the last meeting, it was stated that it would be continued to this meeting.
Only the rebuttal was to be continued.
That wasn't
Sorry about
stated.
that.
That wasn't stated.
Why is there a sign-up sheet?
Yeah, why was there a sign-up sheet?
Not trying to be difficult, just
Well,
trying to understand.
the usual process too is if the applicant submits something new, it sort of opens the floor up to additional public comment.
They did on the 25th.
We'll go on to the next application.
We should probably take a break for a few minutes while I set
Yeah,
this up.
take a 10-minute break.
Is there now no chance for the public to make their voice heard in the future?
But the public will be able to comment on the site plan when it comes in. There'll be another public,
Change is already made.
there'll be another public hearing.
Every one of these people wanted to talk.
They came here to lodge some thoughts, you know? Good stuff.
That's what they did.
They don't care.
When you come back in session, can you just provide us with
It's very dangerous, curvy road. Really upset.
You never know when something's.
There was no new information about the butter. So then,
What's the, what is
What rebuttal?
It was submitted on the 25th.
That's new information. What is
It says October 25th.
new information.
We had held it open so the police
And to review the petition. That was actually the main reason, to review the petition. Because you weren't able to vote, is that what you
We went review the commission, realized that take more of the vote.
Right.
That's what we did.
And that was new information.
When was the rebuttal that you're referring to?
That's when we started out.
Why wasn't there an
Today?
opportunity?
Yes.
Well, you didn't even hear anything you were saying. We just figured you were doing a preamble when we could see. Oh, that's terrible.
But you will be able to do that in the site.
The zone's already changed. The zone's been changed. What good is the
The site plan.
It doesn't do anything.
zone's changed? You voted to change it without
Then
hearing.
they came back to the site plan, so they changed things. They went over things, they clarified.
Did they take the zoning away? Okay. So,
Yeah, so the site plan is just the site plan, it's not anything.
why was there a sign up?
I don't know. I don't remember the first.
And no, well, we
That
don't buy
seems to
it,
be
but we
seeming
can
to be
consider
the
it.
I'm sorry.
So you're expecting to talk. Someone picked it up though. I just went over to pick it up. So someone picked it up.
Public comment on the last,
No, it's closed.
that's closed.
Yes. We're on the next item.
Yep, the public hearing is PZ 1924ZC, Spa and Cam, Mystic Seaport Museum, Sea Frost. Master plan, zone change, site plan, and coastal area management. Review applications for construction of a 60 by 100-foot, 1.5-story building for a science and exploration center that will house operations for the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration. Property located at 50 Greenmanville Avenue, Mystic, Assessors Map 173, Block 5, Lot 4, Zone MHD.
Seated for this public hearing are 5 regular members, Ben Filbert, myself, David Rathman, Gardner Young, Lynn Conway, and Fred Dykeman. First, we'll hear from the applicant and all those in favor of this application. And then we'll hear from anyone opposed to this application. And then anyone in general comments. And then the applicant will have the right for rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, my wife is an employee of the Seaport. If you would rather I sat this out and we have an alternate, I'm happy with that.
I'm happy. I don't mind you sitting.
If you were employee.
If you were employee,
If you were employee, I'd say sit down.
Okay?
no.
Does the applicant mind? Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Mr. White?
Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening. Stephen White, CEO and President of Mystic Seaport Museum, also a resident of Stonington, 95 Dolly Drive. This evening, it's my pleasure to introduce this project and provide some context for all of you as to why this is important to the museum. This is not a project that the museum is undertaking, but it is one that a new partner with the museum is undertaking. The mission of the museum is to inspire an enduring connection to the American maritime experience. It's key to tonight's discussion, as is the vision for the museum, which is to reimagine the interchange between maritime heritage and broader contemporary culture. One thing the museum is trying to do is to evolve from a museum that mainly looked back towards the past, but one that also embraces the future. A few museum facts. I think most of this well known to everybody. We were founded in 1929. We celebrate our 90th anniversary on Christmas Day coming up. We have roughly 260,000 visitors per year, 13,000 member households, largely from the state of Connecticut. We're a major economic driver in the local community and employ some 300 people during the high season. We're privately funded, meaning no state line item support, and we're a steward of local history along Greenmanville Avenue. These are the 5 strategic priorities as established by the Board of Trustees. We have a robust strategic plan, but these are the 5 emerging priorities from the plan to maximize the potential of our physical assets, engage new and diverse audiences, reimagine the experiences in the Seaport Village area, forge new partnerships to expand our audiences and revenue, and to develop a comprehensive marketing initiative. To give you some examples of other partnerships that the museum currently enjoys, we have a long-standing relationship with Williams College. We're in our 43rd year of the Williams Mystic Maritime Studies program. The center of that program actually is on a piece of our property immediately adjacent to this particular project. A 15-year relationship with the Wooden Boat magazine and the Wooden Boat Show that brings thousands of people to the museum and to the greater Mystic area. Of course, local Coastal Gourmets, our food service provider, event network, provides all of our museum stores. Lately, Plymouth Plantation, as you know, with respect to the partnership that yielded the restoration of Mayflower II, and our newest partnership and relationship with the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration that you're about to hear from. What is GFOE, as we like to call it? It is a nonprofit organization serving the public good and providing world-class technology and research with respect to ocean exploration. It will add significant value to the visitor experience at Mystic Seaport Museum. For instance, in the middle part of our campus, there'll be a building specifically designated to the research that's going on with the foundation and providing real-time access to the ocean exploration of our ocean's deepest waters. And lastly, it'll bring tremendous global attention to Mystic, Connecticut, as this is one of the premier ocean exploration organizations currently in service. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Dave LaValvo, President and CEO of GFOE.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. My name is Dave LaValvo. I'm the president of the Global Foundation for Ocean Exploration. And as Steve mentioned, we are a 501c3, not-for-profit. We currently have a small office here at Mystic Seaport, and I've been here about 4 years now. The foundation's mission is to basically train the next generation of young engineers and teach them how to design, develop, and operate state-of-the-art technology that gets us to the deepest parts of the ocean. And we do that all over the world with our partners at NOAA. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you just a short video to give you a sense of what we do. The equipment that we develop is all equipment that we develop for our own use on behalf of NOAA. This is the equipment that once developed, it goes all over the world. It dives as deep as 20,000 feet, and all of the data, whether it be video or any types of data, is basically put up live from wherever we are, so anybody anywhere in the world can watch it, and we can share it with them. You can watch it with a few second delay. All the data goes into the National Archives at the Smithsonian Institute and becomes available to anybody who wants to use it for whatever purposes. So.
How quickly? Oh,
Go ahead. Questions?
just how quickly does it get into the National Archives and become public access?
After our cruise, so we'll do cruises about 21 days to a month.
Oh.
We pass that data to the federal government within probably about 2 weeks. And then the federal government has to prepare it and get it ready to go into the National Archives. So normally it hits the archives within probably a few months. And then after that, people can access it through that.
Thanks.
So. What am I looking for here? Oh, okay. Thanks.
Pilot, that's super. Go ahead, that's super. Shoulder, ready to launch? We are ready. All right, lines are clear. Pilot, are you ready to descend? Pilot, ready. Pilot, that's control. Control, Mr. E, repeat back.
So that's just a snippet of what we do. We have multiple engineers, we have filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, software engineers. So from start to finish, we can design, build, and operate all of the equipment that we develop on behalf of basically the country. So, thank you. Any questions? Thank you.
There we go. All right. Good evening. For the record, my name is Chad Frost, Principal and Landscape Architect with Kent Frost out of Mystic. So I'm pretty excited by this project. What GFOE does is pretty amazing. I was trying to describe it to my wife just the other day, and I said, basically, like when you think of NASA and outer space and the companies that build rockets to go out there, GFOE is to NOAA and the undersea exploration is what like NASA is, right? And the other day we were watching the first all-female spacewalk, and I literally was watching it live. And when these guys dive, you can literally watch it live on YouTube, and then obviously it gets recorded and goes on forever. So truly world-class exploration, world-class scientific research going on, and it's very exciting to be able to bring that technology and manpower and brain power to Stonington. So to get on to nitty-gritty stuff, we were in front of you a few months back for the master plan, the MHD revision number 5. At that time, we were here in front of you with 12 projects. The first one was discussion of this project, which we're back here for with this GFOE. And then we had the hotel is another one, and then 10 other projects. We agreed at that point to come back to you with greater information about each of those 2 projects, this one and then the hotel. Tonight we're here with revision 6. See if I can get this to work. Perfect. Which is just for GFOE, which we're calling the Science and Education Center. So one thing that has changed from when we were here a few months ago is that when we were here before, we talked about possible 2-phase buildings, 2 60 by 100 buildings. We're here tonight with only 1 building. So it's just a single 100 by 60 foot building. It is less than the 35-foot height requirement. It's right at about 34 feet tall. And we're calling it a story and a half. It's a full story on the first floor. It's a half story on the second floor because of a mezzanine and a crane that you'll see inside the building in order for them to do their work, which you'll see in the architectural renderings shortly. From a master plan perspective, it's a little difficult to read, but you do have it in your packet. This is the monster building list of all the buildings on campus. The 2 that are highlighted are the buildings affected within this master plan revision. So as part of our master plan update, we have to track every single building on campus from the smallest to the largest, all the square footages, the floors, and everything about them. And so this is the highlighted areas of the 2 buildings. We have 1 new building coming in, and then we actually have a pilot house, which is classified as a building which came off of a tugboat, sitting in this area that has to go away. So we have 1 building demolition technically, and 1 building addition. To run through the site plans, although this is a very, I think, pretty simple project from a planning and zoning perspective. As I mentioned, it's a 60 by 100 foot building. The site of this is on, as we talked about last time, it's on the southern parking lot, on the eastern edge of the parking lot, right next to the Williams Mystic Maritime Studies building. So that location stays the same. I don't know if I can, oh, I can't point with the See if this will work. Does that work?
Yeah.
All right. So that is the Williams Mystic building. This is the current site, as we talked about before. That is basically the log storage area, material storage area the Seaport currently uses. They also have stuff, this is the parking area. This is the main drive that comes in from Route 27 and turns and fills all the parking aisles. There's parking along here, but there's a lot of material storage in some of those parking spaces around the periphery of the parking lot as well. So that's the survey of the existing conditions. The proposed conditions, as I mentioned, it's a 60 by 100 foot building. Can you see that? Yes. Very close and adjacent to the Mystic Williams structure. It consists of a simple driveway for the tractor trailers. So the robots that they build, the underwater robots, have to be transported around by a semi-truck. They come in, they will need to come in the driveway and do a back-end drive into basically a large loading bay. And that's where you see this gravel pad on the far side. That's for the tractor trailer to actually go through the building and have the back end come out the other side in order for the robot to be in the right place for the crane to lift off it inside the building. So there's a simple driveway for that service. There's parking along the front. We are relocating some parking spaces where there's currently a driveway and moving some parking around. And then it's a simple sidewalk up to the front door entry. And some stone walls along either side. I should point out that this is not part of the museum paid experience. As per the MHD zone, we cannot have this part of the visitor experience. However, it will be open to certain exhibitions for students to be able to come in and participate and see what's going on. So that's why it is a science and education center. It's just not part of the paid experience for this section within the museum itself. Those stone walls as you walk up are so that if there is a school bus group of kids coming, they have a place to sit on the way in and out of the building. I will also note that this area on the side is where we will be consolidating all of the material storage to the south of where the building is going now currently. If you've been out there at all recently, they've been in the process of kind of trying to sort through all of the logs and the wood and everything that's stored out there and start to move it around, decide what's worth keeping and storing it. And so that's all being moved to the side. I'll also point out that in our planting plan, we had evergreen screening between the parking spaces and that material storage area, just to screen it. Again, kind of thinking of your typical zoning requirements and wanting a buffer screen between material storage and the general public. That was one of the comments we got back from the Architectural Design Review Board, was that they would actually prefer us not to put in that screening so that the public can see the material storage area, as they think it's part of the inherent nature of the Seaport. So that's something for us to discuss tonight as well. Stormwater drainage perspective, again, very simplistic, but meets all the needs of the Connecticut Stormwater Manual. We are doing some minor grading, as we talked about before. This is the site. There's a very steep hill behind it, so there's some grading that happens on the east side of the building, on the hillside. We have some catch basins along the back. It goes into a couple of different infiltrator banks. But the gist of it is that we capture and treat all the required stormwater per the Connecticut Stormwater Manual on site before it gets discharged into a basin. As far as utility hookups, we have everything available on site. This is just the diagram of the runs of where those utility runs have to happen. I will also point out that although there is currently a moratorium from the WPCA on sewer hookups and projects within this area, that this is approved by the WPCA because there is a building on campus, actually where the exhibit space for GFOE will be going on campus. There's a couple bathrooms that will be taken offline there. And so in exchange of the bathrooms coming offline there, we'll be putting a couple of bathrooms in this building. And so that's the trade with WPCA to allow this to happen while the current moratorium is in place.
And then once the moratorium is lifted, which I'm sure it will be someday, would you have to come back to the committee, the commission, to restore the bathrooms that you're traded?
Right now there would be no plan to, but yes, if there was additional bathrooms brought on through additional structures, we would be back. If it was just simply bathrooms that were closed and turned off and turning them back on, we wouldn't be back in front of you because that wouldn't be a zone change perhaps. But
Okay.
because this is a new building and that it's an issue right now, that's why we wanted to have clarification. And I do believe that the letter is in Keith's report as well.
Thank you.
We have a couple of drawings, again, just typical stormwater erosion control protections that are required. I will also point out that we did get a list from the town engineer of concerns. All of those concerns were addressed, and all those plans are what were resubmitted in front of you today. So we've met all of it, or we believe we've met all of his concerns, and that's what's on the plan. From a planting plan, as I mentioned, very simple. We're adding some street trees that continue the context of the existing parking lot. We're adding some basically foundational plantings along the front. And then we were adding the evergreen screening, if you can see my pointer, along either side of where that material storage area is. Again, thinking that people might not want to see it, but that's a discussion to have tonight. We have some details, all the details in your package of typical construction details, stormwater infiltration details. To talk a little bit about traffic, we did go to the police commission. They had no concerns and voted unanimously in support of the project. This operation has about 10 employees at any given time. As was mentioned already, they already have office space currently over the bookstore on the Seaport campus. Those offices will get relocated to this facility. So we already have some of the staff accommodating for parking already on site. There'll be a handful of more that come in. The parking can easily be accommodated within that entire south lot. There's an abundance of excess spaces allowed. You will note, because of the way we shifted things, technically in the drawings, there's a net loss of 2 parking spaces. But I like to point out, if you go out there and drive around that lot, you can clearly find more than 2 spaces that have material currently in them, that if you really wanted, we could move and we'd have a net loss of no spaces at all. No. No specific designation for any parking spaces, because it's not needed for this and not needed to separate for the general public going to the Seaport. So we have no adverse environmental impacts. We did get the letter back from DEEP, which is in your packet with no impacts. The ADRB came back with the 3 comments, the buffer that I mentioned, refining roof color, which we're very open to. And then they had a very kind of open suggestion about thinking about modernizing the building design at all, which is a little bit of a controversial topic. We were trying to, as you'll hear from the architect momentarily, the building was trying to fit with the Maritime Studies building right next door and look contextual. The Architectural Review Board kind of felt, well, this is such a cool and high-tech business with such amazing stuff happening inside of it. Why don't you make the building look like what might be inside of it? We could add some features if you really felt it was necessary, but we thought it was more appropriate to be contextual with the adjoining property. Town engineer comments were addressed, as I mentioned, police commission. We did get notice from the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments that they had no objections, Ledgelight had no objections. With that, any questions for me, or I'm going to turn it over to the architect to describe the building?
Are you the engineer?
I'm the site planner, yes, the landscape architect.
So you would go storm ready?
Bart and Stadia Engineering technically did all the stormwater drainage. If you'd like to talk detailed counts, we have Stadia here for that. If you have any specific questions.
It looks like you're discharging into an existing pipe that flows out of the detention basin. Is the pipe size is indicated on here, and is it adequate for the town's design storm? I'm sure the town engineers asked this question, but it's not in his report. So
The short answer is yes. I see Bart nodding his head. If you'd like a more detailed question or answer, I can have him come up.
yeah, I would actually.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Bart R.Valenti. I'm a senior engineer at Stadia Engineering. And your question was?
There's an existing catch basin and a pipe that goes to the south, discharges to the south, out of the existing catch basin from the detention basin.
Right.
What size is the pipe and what storm is it adequate to discharge?
I believe the pipe that's discharging is an 18-inch. And the catch basin was set high so that we could store the difference in runoff? Okay,
That's fine, that addresses my question, that's fine.
okay.
It's out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking at the colored picture.
We're gonna get there, yep.
Oh, good, okay, I'll hold my thoughts. Go
I-
ahead.
Did you consider at all having solar hot water or solar PV on this roof? I realize it doesn't face quite south.
I will let the architect answer that momentarily.
Okay.
If that works.
Yep.
Any other site-related questions? No? Okay, let me get through all these plans. Oh, wrong way, of course. All right, Stefan, you're up. I will, sure, I'll offer it.
Good evening. My name is Stefan Michopoulos. I'm the architect on this project. What you've heard tonight is a very exciting project. I mean, it's one of the most exciting ones I've worked that I can remember of. With the simplicity of this building and the size, the volume, all that basically was developed by the need of the use of the building itself. You heard about the semi-truck need to be able to back in through the building. You heard about a crane that's within the building that's going to lift the robots and take them where they belong within the building itself. All that use was determine the size, the shape, and what you see as part of the building itself. What you're seeing now here is a floor plan on the first floor, basically. You see the semi-truck being able to go right through. The representation of the columns where the crane is basically sitting on, that goes along the whole length of the building itself from north to south. The crane itself needs a basically clear space of over 23, 24 feet approximately, so that would determine the height of the interior open space that we determined there. And also the simplicity of the building, because that's all we needed for, to operate the crane and floor space to work on the robots itself and design them for the engineers themselves. The 2 bathrooms that Chad mentioned is basically there for the maximum 10 staff use. And the rest of it is just storage for the expensive equipment that belongs there, cameras and everything else. Go to the next one. Since we have a lot of volume within the building itself, we have a mezzanine space that's going to house some offices, private offices for the engineers so they can work, and a small staging area where they can also work on whatever they're designing. The elevations themselves, as you see, like I said, it's a very simple building. It was determined by the use of it itself. The materials, we try to use the same materials that we have next door, basically, with the siding, the asbestos, the cement fiber siding, metal roofing, and the vertical siding is the red 9-inch basically metal siding, again trying to show the old barn, New England barn style architecture. In this particular one, you can see that the building is situated in such a way that it's far away from any neighborhood of buildings. The property line, if you can see, the red line is way in the back. It's approximately 300 feet from the building. It's a very steep slope and very well vegetated, full of trees. So the building is not really visible from the neighbors in the back. It's, as far as size, is very comparable to the adjacent building, the next to it, and these are some more views, so you can see how it fits into the property itself for the adjacent building. I'm not sure what else I can tell you other than answer any of your questions that you might have. It's very simple building, very. There was a question about the solar panels. The way the angles are sloped of the roof does not give us the best possible use for that. And if we try to capture it, we have to orient it towards the south, which would make them very visible and maybe in your face by sloping them to catch the sun. So we decided not to go with that at this point anyway.
Are the lower, you've got the red, and then you've got kind of a silver. Is that just metal or?
That's the one that we, exactly the same color that's being used next door to the other building. We try to capture and tie it in, so it ties in the whole street facade there. We don't want something in your face with the new building. We just want to make sure it blends in with what we have there already.
It's the hardy board, clapboard side.
Okay.
It's not metal, it's clapboard.
It's clapboard, okay. It's gray here, so I couldn't tell. So in comparison to the building that's right next door, how big is that building that's right next door?
How big in footprint and height?
Yeah.
Can I go back on this? How do you go back on this? You can see on the elevation itself, that's a true elevation of the two buildings. So you can get a very good idea of the compared size of the two.
No, the height kind of dwarfs.
Well,
It's uphill.
you got to remember though that our building starts at 3 feet high, 4 feet higher in elevation than the existing building.
Oh, I see.
Lynn, the building next door is 3911, and this one's 44.9.
And what's our height, our height? I thought you said.
Well, that's the total, we don't count the way we just put the height.
Your height here
It's
is
the-
34 feet 4 inches.
Right.
The way you define it.
Right, the way we define it, which really is odd, if you ask me.
Well, it goes to the way the mass can be perceived.
The rest of you don't count.
A little.
Very difficult to lower that building with that slope behind it. You would have to take all those trees down.
Well, we can't,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
we'd be in a floodplain.
Right.
We're literally putting the building right at elevation 13, which is the floodplain. So as soon as we go any lower, we're now into all sorts of crazy flood insurance. You got extremely expensive robotic equipment, so we don't want to be in the floodplain.
Yeah, in this zone, the maximum height's 35 feet, and that's to the midpoint of the sloped roof. And it can go up to 45 feet if it's specifically approved on the master plan, which this would be.
So it is taller than, by 10 feet?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, Keith, did I misunderstand what you were saying?
Showing the drawing.
Taller than by 5 feet.
No, it meets your building height regulation by less than 8 inches. Because your building height is, in this zone, is 35 feet high.
Yeah, what I'm
As you measure building height.
What I'm saying, the top of the roof, the building next door is 39.
Oh, okay.
And the top of the roof, this one's 44.9.
Yes.
8 feet.
That's what we go by.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as zoning requirements.
This to be reviewed 5 feet.
Right. We did not ask for a height exception up above the 35 feet because we felt we were within it.
I had somebody.
So we did not ask, although this zone allows us to go up to 45 feet high, we did not ask for that in this application because we feel we're meeting the meeting the height requirement of 35 feet per your definition.
Any other questions? Fred, you got the light on. Glenn, you got the
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm gonna leave you.
Anyone else like to speak in favor of this application? Guess not. Huh? He's getting it.
My name is Bob Rogers, Stonington resident. Full disclosure, I'm a trustee for the Seaport. And I've known about this for a while, and I'm just very impressed with both the program, and I feel it doesn't really impact in any negative way. So I hope that the commission will see fit to approve it.
Anyone else? From Mr. Cohen?
Steve Cohen, president of Mystic Aquarium and resident of Stonington. Two things. First, this foundation's work is extremely important. Ocean exploration is critical to the United States and to our ocean policy. And it's a wonderful thing to have this in Mystic and to have the connection to the Okeanos Explorer, which is the official United States ship of ocean exploration. So that's number one. Number two, the building itself, I think, is very thoughtful in design and very low impact on the site. The work that will be done inside of it is very quiet, non-intrusive. You couldn't really ask for a better use in terms of being low impact, high value. So thank you.
No one signed up.
Good evening, Peggy Roberts with the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. I'll keep it short because I know you're ready to go home. But anyway, we love this project. We think it'd be great for the community. We love the Mystic Seaport and all it brings to our community, and we know that this project will ultimately bring more students and more tourists from around the world to see this world-class research, so we urge you to approve. Thank you.
I had one more question, I think maybe for the CEO. Is your primary customer NOAA? And what happens in an unfortunate situation where the plug gets pulled on ocean research? Are you guys going to be left hanging? Do you have other clients you can go to for work?
Yeah, so we work with, our primary is NOAA, but NOAA's got multiple offices.
Speaking to Mike.
So we work, sorry.
It's just in this climate of, that's the wrong word, and you never know when funding could get pulled.
Well, that's the uncertainty of life, I think. So, yeah, we work mainly with NOAA. NOAA's got multiple line offices. The Office of Ocean Exploration is one line office. We work with 3 or 4 within NOAA. So we're spread out within NOAA. We work with the Office of Marine and Aviation to help design and convert their ships for the use of this type of equipment. We work with the National Marine Sanctuaries, so where we go all over the country and basically film and document the status of the National Marine Sanctuaries for NOAA as well. So we're throughout NOAA, not just one organized part. We also are funded by the National Science Foundation, right? And we also do multiple things for private institutions as well. National Park Service is one of them. Yep.
I know you're trying to get up quick, so I just wanted to say that Matt Bedoin, I'm Matt Bedoin, small business owner, resident of Mystic, Connecticut. Just wanted to speak in support of this also. My dad was an engineer for the Navy, and I see the confluence of the engineering mindset in the Navy with the aquarium and the Seaport, and this is such a great addition to the community. I think that's a really good idea. The building itself looks like it could have been here forever, so I think the I don't know, ironic's the wrong word, but the nature of such a high-tech building and such a blend into the seacoast kind of building is really a cool idea, and I just want to speak in support of it. Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak in favor? Is there anyone in opposition?
My name is Ed Novak, and I'm a budding property owner here.
And I just want to say that when the Mystic Seaport was given this marine heritage thing, I don't think that any of this stuff was had in their mind with any of these projects they've got going. We're going from an office building to something that looks very industrial, where they're building things, we got tractor trailers coming out and everything else. And I just don't think that the people who gave the Mystic Seaport that heritage site, that was to let them go and run their museum, and I don't see how this fits in with a museum at all. And that's just all what I'd like to say.
Anyone else? What?
I have a question for the applicant. Based on the comment, could you tell me how often the large tractor trailer trucks would be coming in and out of the building? You know, is that?
So the mission of this foundation is to explore, and we don't do that in the shop. Right? We design, we train young engineers to build, and then we operate. Our grants demand that we operate, and we operate normally about 8 months of the year. During that period of time, we take the equipment out at the beginning of the season and bring it back at the end of the season. So it's a very low traffic with respect to moving equipment in and out. The equipment goes to the ship, it lives on the ship. We have a dedicated vessel for these projects. So all the equipment lives on the ship for the entire field season, and then it comes back in, mostly in the wintertime for repairs, upgrades, things like that.
And when you're building a ship, when you're building a new vessel, do you have a lot of truck traffic in and out? Because you'll be building it there, right?
Building robotics.
Yeah.
Yes, but not a lot of traffic, no.
Okay. And there's no intention of having a tractor trailer parked there, you know, for an extended period of time or anything like that?
No, we don't own any of that kind of equipment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Comments on this application?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Something I heard at the meeting, the presentation. For the record, my name is Carlene Donnarummo. I live in Pawcatuck. Mr. Frost mentioned that this building is not part of the paid fee to go into the museum. And only maybe groups would sign up and to bring their classes there to see. Is that, I don't have a clear understanding if that's the same setup for the adjacent building. It is, in your knowledge. Okay, so why would someone want to go see a pile of timber to be used on the ships? I do not agree with the Architectural Review Board that those trees should be taken away. I think that they should be there, they should be buffered, because I don't think people are going to go over there and look at that and say, oh, where's this wood coming from? It came from Florida after the storm or whatever. I think it should be buffered, and the trees should stay as they planned. Thank you.
Would anyone like to comment on the rebuttal?
I'll also, for the record, I'm going to submit, we've already submitted digitally, but I'll submit it as well. The letter, the neighbor notification letter, as well as all the receipts that we sent out, certified mail.
The question was, how does this project fit in to the mission of the museum? Our mission is to inspire an enduring connection to the American maritime experience. With this project, with GFOE, they will beam through satellite technology real-time exploration of our ocean's deepest canyons immediately, directly to the museum, to a building in the middle part of our campus, so that school groups during the day, families, individuals like yourselves can access this type of real-time amazing research, whether it's seeing deep reefs, whether it's seeing wrecks, whether it's seeing species that have never been seen before. All of that is accessible to the public at Mystic Seaport Museum. So it is very much part of our educational mission. It is something that we feel fits directly into our vision for the future for the museum, and is a direct parallel to the science and the exploration that the Williams Mystic undergraduate program is undertaking with respect to studying our ocean's health and well-being.
So let me just pursue that, because I think what the comment was that when the Mystic Museum was established and the heritage site plan was approved, that was many years ago. And your mission statement has changed. It's evolved as your business has changed, et cetera. So I'd like you to address the original mission statement
From
1929? Because I think that's the point here, and that I think is what he was trying to say.
The mission in 1929 was to be educational in purpose, national and sometimes international in scope, and an inspirational force for the future. That was the mission in 1929 by our three founders. You're welcome.
If I could also reply to that, the MHD zone was specifically created to have that flexibility, to allow the seaport to be able to grow and adapt over time. And that's exactly why this zone was created, because if it was truly static, it would be impossible. And if you recall, when this was created, the seaport was in a residential zone. So every single thing on their campus was in violation of everything. And so we created the MHD to be able to create an overall framework of what can be housed and what we want to have there. And we're truly abiding by that. And what's on the west side of Route 27 is the paid experience and all of that. What's on the east side of Route 27 are things like this, institutional uses. That's exactly the words out of the MHD regulation, is institutional uses to help promote Mystic Seaport, which we think this fits perfectly with that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any commission member have any questions? Last time for the alternates to ask questions, okay?
So let me, if I can just add that, unlike the previous application and other master plan applications, this is a master plan and a site plan application combined. So they're not coming back with all the engineering details. They already have them with this plan. So it's basically, once this is approved, they don't have to come back to you to build this. Yeah, the MHD regulations do specify that less intense museum activities, such as administrative offices, maintenance buildings and facilities, barns, greenhouses, parking, storage, student housing, research facilities, and educational classrooms can be on the east side of Greenmanville, only if appropriately located and buffered from surrounding residential uses and zones. So as Mr. Frost said, that sort of flexibility was worked into the MHD zone back when it was approved in 2005 for the first time. And something that has come up for the commission to discuss is that screening that the Architectural Review Board discussed getting rid of in front of the lumber storage area. There were other stipulations were to refine the roof color. They were basically looking for it to maybe be not so light, maybe, match the gray of the building a bit more, and respect the modern and technical nature of the project and exterior materials and detail. I think the other comments we received were talked about The town engineer had some comments about flood hazard information and drainage, which appeared to be addressed with the revisions that the project engineer has stated, but we have yet to hear back finally from the town engineer. So as far as recommended stipulations, if this were to be approved here, we've got final plan shall be recorded to the issuance of any, prior to the issuance of any zoning permits. Number 2, final plan shall be reviewed to the satisfaction of the town engineer. And number 3, the standard stipulation for the posting of an erosion and sedimentation control bond that'll be posted prior to the issuance of any zoning permits per the requirements of section 8.6.3. Bond amounts shall be established by the town engineer after an estimate of the cost of installing and maintaining appropriate erosion and sedimentation control measures is provided by the applicant and approved by the town engineer. Work shall remain bonded for a minimum of 1 year from the date of completion. This is approved. The effective date of the regulation would be 11/24/2019. And as far as approvals, what we'd be looking for is a decision on conformance with the POCD and comprehensive plan, the waivers requested, master plan application, site plan application, and also conformance with the Coastal Management Act. Because this is in the coastal area management overlay district, a coastal area management application was applied for. Comments were received from DEP, who really didn't have any issue with it. Their comments are in the report here.
I did just have one other quick question before we make any kind of a motion. Okay. Lighting?
Good question. Exterior lighting, there will be some minor wall lights in those stone retaining walls. There's no parking lot lighting added for this project. Directly across the parking aisle from where the parking is, there's existing lights already within the lot. Those are sufficient, so we're no new significant outdoor lighting.
Correct answer. Thank you.
I have a quick question, Ken. The trees that exist now in that wood storage area.
Yep.
Are they Norway maples? Are they beautiful oak trees? Are they, do you know what species they are?
It's all cut wood. It's all wood that came from storm damage.
Growing trees.
The live ones?
Yeah.
There are no live ones. Well.
Oh.
They would plant them, that's my understanding.
I thought there were some standing now.
There are some standing now that have to get cut. Yes, that's just the general.
Well, no. Back it up.
To the south, where the wood is stored, those trees.
The screening. Oh, the screening trees that we're proposing. Oh, sorry.
No. Are there any existing trees now in front of the existing wood lot?
Is there any screening in front of the existing trees?
Yes, there's some tall trees to the, yes, the trees.
I know there's trees behind it. Between the parking lot and the storage, is there intentionally planted trees?
No.
Right, it's native stuff that's just grown because it's a storage area.
Along the parking lot?
Yes, there's no intentional buffer screening. There is material growing there in and amongst the stored material.
Is acting as a screen now?
To some degree.
Okay.
Historic trees.
Historic.
What stuff got all over the parking lot?
Brian had a question.
No, actually, that just answered mine with the trees and screening, so.
Second.
All in favor?